let's talk about Champions League, shall we? Because second legs this week have delivered so far in terms of giving some people scares, giving some people hope. But in the end, we'll start off with Aston Villa going up against PSG. We knew that the Villains had quite a bit to do to unseat PSG, but they huffed, they puffed, they threatened so well to blow that French house down. But in the end, PSG were resilient. But Don, before we get into little bits and bobs about the game, just tell me your overall thoughts, because I thought that was one of the most entertaining games I think I've seen in a while.
It was off the back of them beating Liverpool a few weeks ago, which I tell you, when you look back, you can look back at that game and think, well, Liverpool come out of that game with credit because PSG are just nearly the perfect side. And they proved last night the way they played against Villa. They were sensational in midfield. They keep hold of the ball. They score goals. They've got wide men that are brilliant, that can take anyone on. They've got Dembele, who's an amazing form, but it's the way they play. But Villa give a real good account of themselves. I actually got the feeling watching the game, Villa played like an English side. As in, like, they got in amongst them after they went 2-0 down, of course. Then they realised, right, we can't outplay this PSG side. It's going to be impossible. So why don't we try and do it our style? We'll try and trample all over them. We'll go a little bit longer. We'll get the ball to Rashford, who was brilliant. And they were so close. I mean, they come out of that game with so much credit. Any Villa fan watching that game last night would have known it would have been nigh impossible to beat PSG over the two legs. But my word, Villa and Unai Emery and the players come out with some credit.
Absolute credit. What an entertaining game it is. We're going to definitely look at both sides separately now. We'll get to Villa second. Let's talk about the winners and the ones who move on to the semifinals now, and that is PSG. There's always the good, the bad, the ugly. Let's talk about probably the bad first, because we'll end on a high, as I usually like to do. Do you think, looking at this game, Aston Villa probably exposed some limitations in this PSG team that's gotten all of us excited in the Champions League this season?
I think it's a fair point you make, and I think it's a brilliant question. My takeaway from the game, I thought PSG found it a little bit easy, and I thought they treated Villa, once they went 2-0 up, of course, not from the start, but they stopped doing the things that they were doing well. So once PSG scored a couple of goals, all of a sudden, they were playing 5-yard passes, taking risks instead of going forward and getting it to Dembele or Doué or Kvaratskhelia. They started to go backwards, started to go into the goalkeeper. They stopped doing, and I think that's what Luis Enrique will have enforced his message on the training ground the day after today, or maybe he's in the analysis for the next game. When you get a team 2-0 up, you have to keep doing the right things. And if they had done that, they probably would have went on to score 4 or 5. The fact that they took their foot on the gas and come down a gear or two, and they started taking chances, all of a sudden Villa went, well, hang on a minute, why don't we try and press them? Because they're not going for our throat at 2-0 up. They've decided that the game's won over the two legs, 5-1 up, I think it was, on aggregate at one time. So
yeah.
They started taking chances, and Villa thought, you know what, let's just have a go. Let's close them down. Then they got their goals, and all of a sudden, momentum's a huge thing in football. They started getting belief. But it's a fascinating question on the whereabouts of where PSG are. I still think they're the best side of the tournament, or one of. And I think my analysis of the way they played last night, it 2-0 up, I thought they had a lot more gears to go through, but they decided keep ball was the way to go, but they got lucky.
I suppose Arsenal and or Real Madrid may be looking extra close at that Aston Villa game. We'll see what happens later on tonight. But another question I have too, because ESPN FC on social media, our account, just posted a very interesting stat, and that's the fact that PSG have advanced to the Champions League semifinals in 4 of the last 6 seasons. The only 2 seasons that they didn't get to the semifinals, as a matter of fact, they were knocked out in the round of 16 on both occasions, is when they had Mbappe, Neymar, and Messi as their front 3. Now, that stat blows my mind, because the whole point of PSG was to build this super team, almost like a Manchester City, star-studded, and to get Mbappe to win the Champions League in his hometown shirt. That, of course, never happened. All 3 have since gone right now, and we feel like we're seeing PSG really playing as a team now. So as you just said, you think that they're still the most talented team in this tournament right now, or the best looking one so far in this tournament. So they're the real deal. Are they still your favorites to win this?
They are, Alexis. They are my favorites because they can do anything. And when you look at that team, and I always gauge it by whoever they're playing against, whoever it might be, whether Aston Villa or Liverpool or Barcelona, whoever it might be, I always try and gauge it how many of the opposition players would get in the PSG team. And their answer is there's not many. They got, I mean, you can pick holes in Donnarumma if you want, but I still think he's a fantastic goalkeeper. I believe Nuno Mendes and Achraf Hakimi are the best two fullbacks in world football. You've got the experience of Marquinhos. Then you go into midfield. There's not many better midfielders than Fabian Ruiz, Vitinha, and João Neves. I mean, they're amazing. And look at the front three. I mean, it's nearly the perfect side. So whichever they play, semis and final, when you amalgamate, I would guess like a combined side, PSG are going to come out on top. Probably, I would imagine 7 or 8 players, if not more. So these are very strong. The experiment, as you said, with the Galacticos was never going to work, in my opinion, because fantastic players they were, but Father Time catches up to everyone. And the fact that they didn't really want to track back and they didn't want to work as individuals, as a team. I never really thought since day one that was ever going to work. It was exciting to watch, but it was never going to work. But you look at PSG now and you go, these are the complete team.
And that's interesting to see too, because usually when you lose someone like Mbappe, like Messi, okay, Neymar, okay, but the one who this team was built around was Kylian Mbappe. We know exactly what he means to the club. We know what the club and the city means to him. And the fact that he just left, he's not even really completed a full season yet at Real Madrid. You almost expect that there would be some growing pains in getting used to life post Mbappe. But we're not seeing that. So what's impressed you the most about how they've managed to improve from losing such a key person?
Well, Kvaratskhelia can play on either side. He's predominantly more when he played for Napoli off the left-hand side, but he's got Doué and Barcola on that side, who are two fantastic, brilliant players who are willing to work hard for the badge. And they're the sort of team players that you need, but ultra skillful at the same time. So I just get the impression Dembele's form has been off the charts, by the way, who's not really a number 9, plays as a false 9. So he's a guy that can play wide as well. So when you look at PSG, I look at a group of players that are very versatile. So injuries are always a manager's fear, but I get the impression when you watch PSG, if 1 or 2 of those players that I mentioned got injured, they can all just rotate and swap positions. And then the fact you add in Vitinha and João Neves in the middle of the park and Fabian Ruiz, they can slow the tempo down like they did last night. They've done it at Anfield, I think, in 90 minutes, more so in extra time. So they've got this wonderful, arrogant ability to back themselves on the ball. But yet, if you want to try and press them, it's difficult because they're technically very good. But if you press them by and you really press them high up the pitch and they pick you off, and as we saw last night with the first 2 goals, when you get it wrong, they're devastating. And that's what PSG are. They're a devastating side to watch. And they're almost like a throwback team because apart from that little wobble like they had last night when I mentioned they tried to play a little bit too slow, they are an amazing side to watch. They're a counter-attacking side where they need to be, but also technically very calm and it can slow the tempo down and out-pass you. So there's some side to try and beat.
Yeah, I think it was Ezri Konsa after the game that said what got Villa or what devastated them, as you pointed out, were those 2 early goals. And when your fullbacks are scoring early goals so quick out of the blocks, I mean, you just wonder, do we even need that forward line?
How
do you stop them? And then if it goes to penalties, they can hold their nerve as well to do it. PSG looking like an unstoppable force, but they were nearly stopped by Aston Villa. And we do have to say, because what an incredible season Aston Villa are having, especially in the Champions League. I mean, Unai Emery had us all believing that there could have been an upset on the cards as well. Looking at Villa, who stood out for you in just
Rashford.
What could have been an unforgettable night in history?
John McGinn played well, but I thought Marcus Rashford was excellent. Yeah, I thought he was excellent. I look back at that game, and Villa was so close. And Unai Emery was talking afterwards. He said the margins were very fine, and they were, because when you analyse how Villa played once they went 2-0 down, and they went English, and I say that sort of loosely by just going that little bit longer and adding more pace to the game. I thought Rashford was back to his very best last night. But you look at the chances that they had. Asensio came off the bench. He had a real chance one-on-one with Donnarumma, but the best chance after Konsa had scored was the header that he actually missed. He was wide open, and I think it was a Rashford cross, a free kick it was. And he put a great ball in from the right-hand side. And Ezri Konsa will replay that over and over again, because that's what we do as professionals. We always analyse the bits that you get wrong. We never highlight the bits that we do well. We never sort of pat ourselves on the back. We always go, what if? Could I have done better? That chance was a golden opportunity. And if Villa had scored that one, my word, it would have been a fight. I mean, it was 5-5 at the time if they had got that one back. So that would have been a real test for PSG, but loads of credit for Unai Emery's men.
And I mean, you've been in dressing rooms in similar situations, not necessarily, it doesn't have to be the Champions League exactly like this, but in situations where you almost came close. And now you're wondering, all right, we're in a decent position in the league. We look to all but have secured European football for next season. The Champions League, they were throwing all their eggs in that basket and believing. How do Villa build on this now?
Well, two ways. They need funding from above, so they need to buy better players. That's always difficult when you've got good players. Liverpool's a case in point. When you analyse what Liverpool have got, how do you try and strengthen that? So Unai Emery will have in mind, especially when you watch PSG and you watch how good they are technically in midfield, controlling, dictating a game. Well, Youri Tielemans is that man. So can you try and buy better midfield players to play alongside him? They've got players like Ramsey and Morgan Rogers, who are brilliant young players. So they're going to get better. Can you have a number 9 that's going to guarantee you 25 goals a season? Can you get a little bit more out your wide man? It's all margins, Alexis. It's all like Moneyball stuff. If you've got a centre forward that's scoring 15 goals, the next step is you want to buy one that can get 20, or you make him better, and vice versa. If you've got midfield players like Youri Tielemans, who's technically very good, well, he should be getting 10 goals a season. If you're Morgan Rogers, he should be getting 10 to 12 goals a season. Ramsey, the same. So it's either Unai Emery making these young players and some of the experienced players better, which is feasible because he's a brilliant manager, or you say to the board and the sporting director, right, come on, like with quarterfinal Champions League, it's time to kick on. We're going to try and finish in the top 4, but we want to try and get close to the title. All needs a little bit of money. It's never going to go away. The age-old problem and how you fix football teams is if you've got the best teams and the best players, you've got a great chance of winning. So that's what he needs.
Final one on Villa, because as you're speaking about funding and investing in players, you mentioned some big names, but I have to bring it back to my boy, Marcus Rashford. We know that there's a lot more loose ends in that, considering he still is very much a Manchester United player. But from what we have seen from him, and just watching him again last night, Don, seeing him bobbing and weaving through defenders, and these are PSG defenders we're talking about, which we know normally on a regular Marcus Rashford day, this is his level, you know? But seeing what we've seen from Marcus Rashford now, is he someone that Villa and Unai Emery have to do something to hold on to?
Break the bank. I think you're looking at a player. Isn't it brilliant as well from the human side when people like me and people like yourself, when you ask the questions, and I've got to be honest, being an analyst, and we criticize players because it's our job. We critique them, good and bad. But I think when you critique certain players, especially in my opinion, it comes from a point where when I critique Marcus Rashford, it's because I want him to do well. And I critique him because because the talent is in there. We've known it. We've seen it for a long, long time. So whenever you pick holes in someone's performances or their demeanor or their attitude or their character or their ability to run around and work hard, it's because we know he can do it. So he proved last night he can. You're right, Alexis. This is his level. Always has been. Yeah. You might be looking at a case, and it's difficult to try and look from my point of view from the outside world, but you might be looking at a young man that's got away from Manchester. He's got out of that bubble. He's got out of one or two of his mates that sometimes you have to leave behind. And he's gone into Aston Villa, which is a massive football club. And Unai Emery's probably told him on day one when you walk through the door, and people like John McGinn would have said the same thing. You're going to have to work hard to get in this side. So when you're a player like Rashford, you go into a new environment with a brand new manager, top class manager, by the way, you go into that culture in that dressing room, they drag you up to the level. But as they've dragged him up to the level, he's now shown the world, and he's showing Unai Emery, you need to break the bank for me, because if Villa are going to try and compete for top 4 and compete for Champions Leagues, that's the type of player they should be buying. So go for him.
It burns me a little to hear you say that, because, I love me some Marcus Rashford all day, every day, but you know which side of Manchester my heart lies, and it will pain me to see one of our...
Alexis, unless he's got his mojo back and he's got his confidence back and he's got a love for the game back, there's a chance he might go back to Manchester United and reproduce it. I hope he does.
Not to be playing mid-table football, Don. Anyways, moving on. There is so much pain there. Let's talk about Dortmund and Barcelona now, too, because what a last couple of days Dortmund have been having. Could the real Borussia Dortmund please stand up? And is it the Borussia Dortmund that we just saw in the Clasica and now daring to take the game to Barcelona, probably who, apart from PSG, has been everybody's other favorite to win the Champions League this season? Now, a colleague of ours, Mauricio Pedrosa, over on ESPN Deportes, he said that Dortmund has done what many other teams, or not any other team, has done in 2025, and that has made Barcelona look bad. Do you agree? And should there be cause for concern from what we saw from Barcelona yesterday?
Yeah, because you can't expose Barcelona because what they are, they're a side that play ultra high. So you can't expose that. And Dortmund done that last night where you play balls into midfield and then straight away, if that Barcelona back line is high, you expose them by going that little bit longer over the top. I still feel as though when you're going into a game and you're leading 4-0, there's going to be an element in the back of your mind if you're Barca, the game's done. We've still got to manage it. We've still got to play well, but we might not need to be at full tilt. Well, again, they proved, like Aston Villa, Dortmund last night, that they can compete. But I think from a Dortmund point of view, their fans must be like thinking, we are so much a Jekyll and Hyde side. Why can't we do this in the league? Why we're down in 8th or 9th and why we're not producing these performances? Because I can tell you, I've commentated on Borussia Dortmund for probably the last 10 years. And every time they play a top side, apart from Bayern, of course, they tend to put in good performances and get good wins. As soon as they play Mainz or Freiburg or anyone down at the bottom, they lose. You just can't rely on Borussia Dortmund. That's the problem. But last night, I think they proved to their fans who come away from that game thinking that's the Dortmund side. That's why the yellow wall was full last night. That's why the atmosphere was rocking, because we took a good side nearly all the way. They've got to replicate that in the Bundesliga.
Yeah, they absolutely do have to. Is it just typical Dortmund to see them kind of falling at this stage?
I'm afraid so, because the levels are so high, and it's not a knock on Dortmund. It's like you get to this stage and you're playing Barcelona. You know, if Arsenal are playing Real Madrid, the standards and the quality of opposition, and Villa are playing PSG, and the opposition that you're facing, which is, you know, captain obvious, really. Once you get to quarterfinal, semis, and final, you're playing against brilliant sides. So it's no knock on Dortmund that they couldn't quite squeeze through, but you know, they can be optimistic if the future, the way they played last night.